All right, guys. Now, I just have to be completely honest with you. I noticed it. I promise you, I'm nitpicking here because honestly, I don't even feel confident saying this. But as a film connoisseur, I would have to tell you that I would not, and this had nothing to do with the cinematography. This had nothing to do with the writing, and it had nothing to do with the acting, which I feel confidently. And this is probably going to irk you, but I know you saw it. This had something to do with the editing. I did notice maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the film, and I promise you, I'm nitpicking. There were some rough jump cuts.
Well, I hope you have some time codes on those.
I will go back and rewatch. I promise you these happen.
I'm not saying I don't. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying I'm not searching through a 2-hour film for jump cuts.
I don't need you to. I'm just telling you. Trust my word. They're there. But I know one specifically was the dinner scene with like when the dude was asking him about that, and they cut back to the president in the bed. Somebody was still talking, and they cut right to it. It's like they're very rough.
Please send me one example.
I will,
and I'll put it right here.
He just never advertises his accomplishments. You know, he never.
There you go. But other than that, I wouldn't change anything about this film.
And I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying I want to see them for myself. Because I didn't catch them.
I usually at least 3 or 4. Yes.
Because that would bother me. The only thing that I would want to change because I didn't notice the jump cuts was the outtakes and the credits.
Oh, it's not the ending?
Yeah, it is the ending, the true ending after the credits.
Oh, okay.
I'm very happy with the ending.
Okay, I got you.
But the inclusion of the outtakes and the credits, and like I said, I'm torn on it. Part of me is like, you know, it does a great job memorializing Peter Sellers' work, but absolutely, before he died, there was no reason for them to be there and take you out of the movie. Speaking of that, we did actually talk again to cinematographer Nick McLean about this. Check that out right now. I had read about some disagreements regarding the outtakes being included in the credits, like with Peter Sellers, you know, begging the producers to not put it in when they submitted it to Cannes, and him believing that it took away from the magic of the film or the suspension of belief in the character. I totally see where he's coming from if that was his argument, because it does kind of take you out of like, I forgot who Peter Sellers was when watching the movie, and then at the end you get reminded. But I think like for posthumously, there was something sweet about seeing him as himself, having fun with that character.
That's the day we all got to love him, is because, you know, we shot that like halfway through. And actually, it's me that starts laughing a lot.
I ain't taking no jive.
You know, once he starts cracking up, I can hear myself. And I couldn't hold it in.
Raphael?
There was no way. Black man, Raphael. I could hold it. Cut your black ass, you know. But
it was so good.
That's the day you knew Peter Sellers was a real person. And we just had a ball. And actually, the only person I ever heard that didn't like the way it came into the film at the end there was Shirley. She thought it was really horrible to do to the film. But that's the only complaint I ever heard about it. And I love watching it. But I can understand also, you know, that kind of took out from the reality
of chance. So like, you don't want to lose it, because when it happened, it reminds you of 40-Year-Old Virgin when they go and do like Steve Carell breaks character, and then he's no longer that person. He's Steve Carell now. So it kind of takes away. He's Santa Claus. You're not Santa Claus. You're Dad. Like, you know. Thanks, Nick, again for that review. But as you mentioned, I see why you're torn. So it's again, if he was still alive, you'd hate it to death. But if he's dead. If he's dead, it's one way to remember, like, oh, this was the guy that played this great character. Like, if I was a kid from like a tweener or something like that, and I just saw that, I'd be like, man, who is this guy? And then you take it from there.
But so that's exactly what's wrong with it, is that you should never, Peter Sellers never wanted you to see Peter Sellers.
So you should respect his work.
Yeah.
All right.
So that shouldn't be in there.
Guys, that's all that we would change. If you actually take the time to watch this film, let us know what you change. Dave, you know what time it is?
What time is it?
They want to know how many friendly Fs we give this film. Thanks, Nick, again for that review. But as you mentioned, I see why you're torn. So it's again, if he was still alive, you'd hate it to death. But if he's dead, it's one way to remember, like, oh, this was the guy that played this great character. Like, if I was a kid from like a tweener or something like that, and I just saw that, I'd be like, man, who is this guy? And then you take it from there.
But that's exactly what's wrong with it, is that you should never, Peter Sellers never wanted you to see Peter Sellers.
So you should respect his work.
Yeah.
All right.
So that shouldn't be in there.
Guys, that's all that we would change. If you actually take the time to watch this film, let us know what you change. Dave, You know what that time it is?
What time is it?
They want to know how many friendly Fs we give this film. All right, guys, let's bring it down. And listen, we're not going to hold this in suspense. I'm going to jump right into this thing. Dave, you know what I did here?
What? 5? So the French Dispatch gets 3, and this gets 5.
3.5, the French Dispatch. This gets 5. I'm going to tell you why. Again, I went into this with really low expectations. Never heard of it. Never wanted to see it. Really, to be honest with you, hadn't seen a Peter Sellers film in forever. And 10 to 20 minutes in this, I'm like, I'm glad I love film. Only a person that loves film could watch this. By the time I was done and that original ending scene happened, I purposely didn't mention that in this because I don't want to spoil it for people. Like, that was one of those things to where, why you told me, hey, don't read the questions until you watch the film. Because I promise you that would have been a heartbreaker for me if I would have read those questions. My point to you is this, is that the cinematography, the writing, the acting, and the test of time all checked out, checks and balances on this. And I'm not saying it's a 5 like it's the best film ever. I'm saying for me, this is why I'm giving it a 5. And I did not think I was going to. I sat there and tried every single type of way to not give this movie a 5. And again, remember, I didn't laugh out loud one time, but I found myself smirking and appreciating. I'm like, man, this is better than stuff that's getting dropped every other day. The clarity in the lenses, the writing, the story, the intertwines, these things make sense. You're talking about Illuminati. You're talking about lesbianism, masturbation, classism. They touched on every touchy sub that you could, and they did it in an artful way. And at the end of the day, I was like, yo, I didn't never see this coming. This film is a freaking 5 to me, brother.
I agree. I think it is a 5. It is a perfect film in every way that when you go, it exceeded my expectations. I didn't even really know what to expect, but I was so pleasantly surprised. It reminded me in a lot of ways. So we mentioned Wes Anderson, but I think it was like a Coen Brothers film too. Like, it was almost like if Coen Brothers directed Forrest Gump, you get Being There. I liked how much it was refreshing to watch a movie where the filmmakers truly trusted the audience with the subject matter. Like, they weren't spoon feeding anything to you. They didn't spoon feed character development. They didn't spoon feed the punchlines to jokes. You wouldn't be made like, they wouldn't make you aware like, hey, we're about to tell a joke. We're setting up a joke. Here's the punchline for the joke. Now, to make sure you got it, we're going to beat the dead horse for another 3 minutes, even though we don't need to. Like, everything was so undertone and done so subtly and just I'm gonna say nuanced like 100 times, because that's like the key word of this film. Everything was in the simplicity and the nuance of the characters, the moments, and it was just so amazing that they were able to make essentially a conflict-free film with no antagonist and no character arc in the protagonist. Make that interesting for over 2 hours running time. And the moments that are funny, they're funny because like you feel like you really earned the laugh when you get a chuckle out of, and really that's all it is. It was just like very enjoyable chuckles where a few moments after something would happen, it was like it would kind of like register in your mind, oh, this is why he did that, because of
it's
this
intelligent
before.
Comedy.
Yep. And they're never talking down to the audience. And it was also so refreshing that there was no, like, there was no caricatures. Everybody there wasn't like good guys, bad guys, or idiots or smart people. Like,
it was
everybody,
subject matter was what was.
It was all situational.
And you heard me say that earlier. There was never a laugh out loud moment. There were moments of, it's almost like smirks and just like, oh man, I see what they're doing here. And again, I'm not going to say what happened with the end, but I will tell you again that the original ending for me, dude, I told you I got chills. It gave me a Shutter Island film. This film does the thing to you that now I get to go back and rewatch this with a different perspective of looking at it this angle, because I mentioned Jesus Christ here. You said you disagree. Whether you agree or disagray or not, you get to go back and watch it and try to see
what creates an interesting conversation. Right. The way it really took its time was refreshing. Like, especially after growing up with the movies we get nowadays, to see a movie that was like, it would take its time to build little worlds within the world that it was creating. Like I talked about the erectile dysfunction with the president. That was like a 3-minute scene. It had nothing to do with the plot of the film, not even a main character in the film. Why are we lingering on a husband and wife talking about his inability to get it up? Because the more you enrich the little worlds within the world, the more the world of the movie itself is enriched. Like, what's happening?
The president.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like those little more. Chance always made him feel like he was smaller than himself. I'm telling you that what you're saying makes sense. He felt de-emasculated. People love Chance now. He was speaking for Chance. And
it was very refreshing to. Everything now is like biting satire. Everything comes with this degree of cynicism and like a certain like mean spirit about it. And there wasn't. This movie is like the equivalent of meditation. Like I felt at ease. Like movies today are geared to like keep you on the edge of your seat and make you anxious.
You went the speed limit the whole way through, but the destination was like Maui or like Vegas or something. Like you're gonna enjoy this ride.
I feel like it's a lot easier to keep somebody engaged when you're scaring the hell out of them or you're just being provocative or whatever. Like this pulled out no frills as far as like keeping you engaged. It kept you engaged purely with strong character development that were true to the characters throughout the story, interesting dialogue, and I mean, the story itself wasn't even that compelling. It was truly just watching these characters interact with each other in these situations.
There had to be no pitch meeting for this. And we know that there was, but I'll be honest with you, if somebody pitched this to me, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
I'm being honest. I mean, I'm here telling you that it's a 5.
And that speaks to Peter Sellers in itself to read the book that this was based on and think this needs to be a film and I need to be this character.
It almost makes me think that if with a bigger budget and more time and not being rushed, The Living Weight could have been something like this.
Oh yeah, I mean, and they both had that surreal ending. Like he walks on water, and then what's his name?
Walks into his grave.
Yeah, and just chooses like I'm dead now,
and then goes to a Viking funeral.
Both left me with that same feeling of like, okay, this whole thing took place in reality, but that cannot happen in reality. They both ended with that jarring surrealism that begged for metaphor.
Wow.
The last note that I had is, as a writer, as a filmmaker, I felt inspired by watching it because it was so simple yet effective. It made me want to write a character-driven story and give it room to breathe, trust the audience with subtle punchlines. I've seen a lot of great movies, but this was like, I can't remember the last time that I watched a movie and it made me feel inspired as a filmmaker to go out. It almost like this movie challenged me. Like, okay, you've done, I'm going to kill someone this Friday. Sure, it's easy to keep people's attention when you title something, I'm going to kill someone this Friday. And it's all like, or you did, Never Go Back. And that's like it was the challenge of like, do something that is just, that lives on its own with the characters. It doesn't rely on a premise.
I just hate to say that if you did something like that nowadays, you'll be doing it purely for you because we got it and we're kids of the 80s. There is no way in hell that someone nowadays that I mean, maybe a few, but they wouldn't do it. But guys, I'll say this. This is maybe, I think, the second time we both have given a movie a 5.
I don't think we've ever both given a 5.
No, I think it was something we did before. It was Jackie Brown. It was I can't remember. It was something from season 1 or season 2. We've done it. We'd have to check the archives, but we don't normally do this. And we go out of our ways. I think what you were saying before, this film challenged you to even find something really, really wrong with it. And it was like, nah, man, I'm good.
Yeah,
just checks and balances.
Yeah, it was very unassuming. It's just like it didn't try to make a big thing about anything. It just kind of quietly, it's like it
did its thing.
I'm just here to tell you a story. That's all that you can really want from a movie.
It's appropriately titled Being There.
Yeah.
Guys, so there you have it. We don't need to do the math on that.
It's a 5.
It's a 5.
It's a 5. It is a classic for a reason and was well deserved on all the lists that it's so on.
You've got the most classic curse-free episode you're ever going to get from TTFT.
This is unprecedented. It'll never happen again.
Yes, unbadly dressed president.